Hey everyone, it is Alan Kay. Today I'm here to talk about the thrill of the chase in the style of Norman Rockwell. And I'm coming up with the phrase in the style of from a Lorene Mills interview when she's interviewing Forrest and they start talking about Emile de Hory. And if you're not familiar with that, let me just quickly play a clip because it's easier.
You would sell, former Governor John Connally of Texas bought a bunch of Elmire de Horys and you would sell them. And he never signed his work, and he did not copies of masters, but pastiches.
In the style of.
In the style.
If he copied one, then he would be found out. These were actually forgeries. And he said that all the great American museums have his paintings and don't know it.
So that's kind of where my head is right now, is that I feel like a lot of the illustrations in the book are in the style of Norman Rockwell. Some of them are almost identical. And a lot of you know this, and a lot of you maybe are familiar with some of them, but I kind of put together this presentation to show you the list that I had of Norman Rockwell similarities, and then I kind of conclude that with, like, why does any of this matter? So here we go. Let's see here. Okay, that's not working. Let's try this. Okay. So number one, and so I didn't know how to order these. I didn't know if I should go with the dates of the Saturday Evening Post that Rockwell used these, or if I should go by pages in Thrill of the Chase, or by books, Thrill of the Chase, Too Far to Walk, etc. But anyways, here's a bunch of examples, and then I'm going to go into the conclusion with no particular order or sequence. It's just all of my thoughts in a presentation, and I've just been looking at this presentation so long, I can't make it perfect, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of disagreements and a lot of eye rolling, but I thought it was good information, and I think it's interesting no matter what, and to me, it's fun, and for me, that's what it's all about. So here we go. So this first one, No Place for the Biddies, page 20 from The Thrill of the Chase. I'm sure most of you are familiar with this photo, or this illustration from Alan Polt, and then if you look on the left, it's the Saturday Evening Post from Norman Rockwell, and I believe this entire page, or this illustration is called The Gossips, and that featured in March 1948 of the Saturday Evening Post. So a lot of people think that there's something to the biddies, or the old women, or crossing the street, or crossing our waterway, and I'm just showing you here that it's very similar to the Saturday Evening Post, Rockwell, The Gossips in 1948. Next one of my favorites is The Facts of Life, 1951. As you can see, this is very similar to Jump-Starting the Learning Curve. There's some differences in the background. There's a bookshelf in Thrill of the Chase, and there's looks like a little photo in The Facts of Life. And I've seen different versions of Facts of Life as well, so I'm not sure what the original was, but this was one of my favorite ones, and it seems to be one of the most common ones. So, looking into Norman Rockwell's artwork, the dad's talking to the little boy, I'm assuming it's his son, about the facts of life. And there's a mom cat, and kittens all around him. So the boy, just like Forrest, is probably very familiar with the facts of life, being around animals that are reproducing, whether it's his cow or the kittens that he was feeding with milk, and so on. But I thought it was pretty cool, and I believe this just captures the time that Forrest lived, and maybe the time of life that Rockwell tried to capture. Jump-Starting the Learning Curve. Number 3, this is called The Marbles Champ, 1939, Saturday Evening Post. It's not identical, it's not perfect, and to be honest, marbles were very common, so I can't tell you that this was taken exactly from it, but there's already been 2 examples of Rockwell illustrations to this point, so why not throw this one in there too? And to me, it relates to My Spanish Toy Factory and grinding the marbles between his leg. And if this is called My Spanish Toy Factory, the chapter, but in this chapter, Forrest talks about being the marbles champion. I believe he said the grand marbles champion. So Marbles Champ is the name of the Rockwell illustration painting, and Forrest talks about being the grand marbles champ in My Spanish Toy Factory, Thrill of the Chase. Pretty cool. All right, this is a cool one. It's a fun one. Considering buying this print just to hang up on my wall. It's called No Swimming, and again, this is very familiar and similar to My Brother Being Skippy in 51. Of course, that's when Skippy built that crazy helicopter laundry machine thingy, and everyone went running when it lifted a couple inches off the ground and started spewing parts. So on the left, Rockwell's talking about probably these boys who jumped in and waded in a no swimming area and took off without their clothes. And in Forrest's version, they're running away from Skippy's machine. The interesting thing is that who I'm calling Forrest, this kid in the middle with the black pants, he's carrying a shirt and hat just like the boy in the no swimming photo, but the boy in the no swimming photo isn't supposed to have his clothes on because he's naked, but In Forrest's illustration, it doesn't make sense. So again, if anyone thinks that there's hints to these illustrations in any way, maybe that could be part of this one. Who knows? I mean, I'm just throwing it out there. So it's not identical, but it's very similar. No swimming, and my brother being Skippy. All right, this one's called Going and Coming. It's not identical to The Long Ride Home, but I just thought it was cool that in Going and Coming, Rockwell's trying to capture a family trip, taking a long drive with the family on the top. Everyone's excited, blowing bubbles. Grandma's kind of in the back, all chill. Of course, that redheaded kid is not happy with the air conditioning. Father looks pretty happy with his cigar. Mom's pretty content in the front on the way there. But coming back, everyone looks a little disgruntled. Grandma's pretty stoic, the same. Mom's passed out, and Dad looks burnt out. And Skippy's still kind of excited, maybe a little more sunburned. So I thought it was kind of cool. Skippy is the name of the boat. And in my mind, it just reminds me of the Long Ride Home story where Forrest said he and his brother would jump out of their car and run alongside it and have fun on those long rides to and from Wyoming or Montana or Colorado or wherever they were going. So I thought this was pretty cool, but not identical. Over There, this one is more blatant to me. It's called Over There by Rockwell in 1918. I don't think this was a Saturday Evening Post illustration or painting. It's really old, 1918, which is cool. And to me, it looks identical to Stout-Hearted Men. This is when Forrest was going to Texas A&M for those couple days before he got tossed for not paying and not being an actual student. So pretty interesting. I believe these are old military men. Yeah, I don't know too much about it. I probably should have studied up on that before I brought this one up. But either way, look at it. Check it out. It's cool. Rockwell, The Problem We All Live With. I know Davio22 really likes this one. The capture on the left is during 1963. The girl's name is Ruby Bridges. And to me and to many, that's very similar to the Teachers with Ropes illustration. And, if you look at Teachers with Ropes as a whole, it doesn't quite match up. But if you zoom in on the girl with the book, it's almost identical. So, again, if you think that there's something to the illustrations and hints, and this girl on the left, his name is Ruby Bridges, maybe this is a hint to a bridge, or crossing a waterway with ropes, or a rope bridge, or something like that. So, throwing this out there, Teachers with Ropes, page 109, is very similar to The Problem We All Live With, and still do, unfortunately, by Rockwell. Bessie and Me on the right, and this one's called Miss Catherine O'Leary Milking Daisy. I've also seen it just called Milking Daisy or Miss Catherine O'Leary. Again, this isn't identical, and I'm sure there are other paintings that look just like this, but it's just the way of, the rear end of the cow with its head looking casually back with the horns there. Very, very similar. Obviously, it's flipped. Some may call that mirrored, but pretty cool. Daisy, Bessie, not identical, but the cow's butt and head and the stool all look the same. But again, kind of like the marbles one, this could have just been a theme, and this was just a commonplace, so anyone could have captured a scene like this during these times. But again, when these things all start piling up, they seem less coincidence to me and more of something you should look into, an aberration. Missing the Dance. Again, this is one from Too Far to Walk, so not Thrill of the Chase. So again, I'm already stretching. But on the left, Rockwell's depicting a boy. I think that's a boy. Shoot, it might be a girl with a pink bone hair. It's really hard to tell. Either way, it reminded me of Forrest. In Mom and Me, he talks about, I think, going to the dance, or he wasn't allowed to go to the dance, and he was crying in his bedroom, and then his mom allowed him to go to the dance. And so he got all excited and started going, but then he came running back home because he felt like he had left his mom alone, even though he appreciated that she let him go to the dance. So this illustration from Rockwell on the left just reminds me a lot of the Mom and Me dance story that Forrest told in Too Far to Walk. So I'm already switching books. I've already left the Thrill of the Chase, but I'm still talking about Rockwell. And it's not even the same illustrator. It was Alan Polt in Thrill of the Chase and Danny Boldeson for Too Far to Walk. And I am definitely not implying that Alan Polt knows or thinks that there's any clues in any of these illustrations. And in fact, I did some research, and I think it was on Chase Chat, and I didn't see the actual quote from Forrest, but someone on Chase Chat said that Forrest said that he didn't tell Alan Polt to imitate Rockwell at all. But I've yet to see that from Forrest directly, so I didn't want to put it in here. So if anyone has a quote from Forrest talking about Rockwell at all, please send it to me, because I think that's the missing piece here. Is I don't know if Forrest has denied it, or if he has just not talked about it. So anyways, kind of derailed there for a second, so let me just carry on. Rockwell, triple portrait. So again, I'm still on Too Far to Walk, so I've already left Thrill of the Chase. But this triple portrait, which is Rockwell painting a picture of himself looking in the mirror doing a charcoal painting, is pretty awesome to me. This is maybe another one I kind of want to get a print of. And it just reminded me of Mirror on the Wall. Not identical, but it's just the way that Forrest looks in the mirror and wants to perceive himself as his younger self. It's the same way that Rockwell's painting himself as either the way people see him, the way he sees himself, or the way he wants to be seen. So it reminds me of Forrest's perception in a mirror and Rockwell's perception of himself in a mirror and his paintings. So not identical, but Rockwell loved mirrors, and so does Forrest, and he's referenced them many times. Another fun fact, I heard that Rockwell used to hold mirrors up to his paintings to make sure that they looked good from all angles, including the reverse angle. And I thought that was a cool little fun fact. So for all of you into mirrors and mirrors in your solve and flipping things around, Rockwell liked to do that as well. So why does it matter? I've already said that, and if you've already stuck with me this long, you're either excited like the old guy catching a fish and thinking you're getting something, or you're the kid that's like, what the hell are you talking about? We already have a fish. This has nothing to do with anything. But to me, this is fun. So why does it matter? Let me just talk about a few things, and let me jump into it. One, the number one thing in my mind is this quote, and it's not this quote in particular, but it's just that these illustrations have to matter. And in Scrapbook 152, Forrest said at the very end, or towards the very end of the scrapbook, life should be an illustrated search for hidden treasures and not just a guided tour. So he's telling us right there, it's an illustrated search for hidden treasures. Forrest has also talked about his favorite books being a kid or even growing up. They all had illustrations and great illustrators that were adding color and value to them. And I've also mentioned this in my previous video. I believe Rodney Greenway and others have asked Forrest to do audiobooks or audio recordings of his book, and Forrest had replied saying that he doesn't want that to happen because the illustrations and the graphics and the photos make the book. I think he said it's the book wouldn't be anything without the illustrations, or the book wouldn't be anything without the photos. So to me, the illustrations and photos matter. The words in the book matter, and obviously the poem matters. So I'm not saying discount the poem or discount the chapters or the illustrations. I'm saying you got to look at everything all together to solve this thing. And that's just my opinion. But there's other interesting things. So Rockwell, obviously, can be split up into a rock well. And I know this isn't a super deep well, but many people have hinted or thought that the chest is hidden in something in a way like this. And I took two examples, one from Too Far to Walk and one from Mysterious Writings. Forrest has used this illustration in more than one occasion. It's also in The Secrets of San Lazaro. So there's something to the way that he liked this story, the way that he found this artifact, which wasn't very exciting, that maybe this is the way the treasure's hidden, and it could be in a rock well somewhere. So I thought that was kind of cool. Just a fun thought. Another idea or concept is it's his Rockwell Commander. And two recent conversations have popped up recently, which I thought were very interesting because I was already thinking about his Rockwell Commander. One was in Jason Dent's Fenn Treasure Hunters on YouTube, his Playboy interview, and I'm not sure if it's still public or not. But in that interview, at about the 16-minute mark, Forrest talks about that when he got his Rockwell Commander, the whole world changed for him. Instead of driving 1,000 miles here and there, 1,000 miles back, it opened up a whole new world to him. And in this case, he's not talking about Wyoming. He's talking about driving all the way to California to buy artifacts or buy real estate sales to bring them back to New Mexico to sell them. So the 1,000 miles he was referring to was flying all the way out to Simi Valley on that runway and driving up on the 9th or 18th fairway and getting those the carpet and the rug and some paintings and bringing them back. So he said his Rockwell Commander changed his whole world for him. And then also on Cynthia's blog, Chasing Fenn's Treasure, Forrest recently started doodling in a Thrill of the Chase book for the giveaway at Fenbury, I believe. And on this page, oh shoot, I should have flagged it. It's the Taos. I'm blanking right here. Anyways, it's the Taos chapter. And on this photo, he he doodled in my Rockwell Commander 112T, I believe, which is 112 Turbo. So in 2 recent conversations, he has talked about how his Rockwell Commander was so important to him and that it changed his world and opened up his life. So I think that's kind of cool. That, again, if there was just one of these instances about Rockwell, I probably would be, discounting it. But so far, it's just the word Rockwell and the illustrations of Rockwell and his Rockwell Commander seem very important to him. Again, so besides his Rockwell Commander and Rockwell, the illustrator, he talks about rocks a lot. Piles of rocks, rocks on graves, and things like that. And in Scrapbook 166, which he calls Graveyard Logic, he kind of duplicated that scrapbook into Once Upon a While, but he called it Divorce Logic. But it's the same story, more or less. And he talks about this woman who was getting a divorce or in the middle of a divorce and buried an urn to be symbolic for the divorce. By the way, she dug a hole and piled up rocks on top of it and covered it with dirt. And I just thought that was interesting, that just piles of rocks, Graveyard Logic to Divorce Logic. And that's just not the only time he's talked about piles of rocks. He's also mentioned it in Scrapbook 92, Me and Mummy Joe. He said for years in the middle 60s, they carefully moved rocks, shoveled dirt, screened for artifacts, compiled data, and helped uncover Mummy Joe. And the cave finally had a name. So they're talking about, moving around rocks and uncovering rocks and shoveling dirt to uncover Mummy Joe and name this spectacular cave. No, the treasure is not in a cave. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that he's talked about many times uncovering rocks and piles of rocks and things like that in important ways. I also understand he likes archaeology, and that's just the nature of that science. So it could be a stretch looking for every pile of rock mention or any mention of rocks, but this is called the Rockwell presentation, so there you go. In Altered Dimensions 2015, he also, again, duplicated this story, I believe, into Montana Golden in Once Upon a While. But he's talking about that story, if you remember, if you're familiar, about hiding his Dr. Pepper under a rock in the cooling waters of a rivulet somewhere in my allotted public acreage. If you haven't read this story, this article on Altered Dimensions, I highly recommend it. I'll probably put links to all of these sources in the description. And then later on in that same Altered Dimensions article, he says, there are dangers involved. Things can complicate the search. Earthquakes, mudslides, forest fires, floods, trees, falling rocks. And a lot of people might discount that last statement about falling rocks. I mean, forest fires, floods, and trees obviously imply that you're near water and there's going to be trees. But falling rocks is important to me because that means that there must be rocks above that can fall down onto the treasure. So just keep that in mind when you're looking, where you're looking. I'm not saying you need to be next to a cliff or at the bottom of a karst, but there should be rocks at some sort of angle that could perhaps fall down towards you. So maybe it's not in perfectly flat ground. Just flagging that. And again, duplicated this into Once Upon a While. So just calling that one out. Falling rocks, hiding his Dr. Pepper under a rock in the cooling waters. Scrapbook 174. This one, I don't know what the scrapbook was called, but it was April 2017, and again, duplicated into Once Upon a While. And that one was called The Quanah Chief on a Black Pony. But that one he's talking about looking for the grave of Captain Carter. And I'm just going to read the highlighted area. We are ever watchful for the errant pile of rocks that were deliberately placed to keep scavenging animals from digging. And then down to the bottom, 20 days or more we did that often. Wow, this is tiny font, sorry. Often finding remnants of the fight, a canteen, a rusty knife, a brass cavalry uniform button, lots of bullet casings, but no pile of rocks. Again, talking about a pile of rocks, and this is in a scrapbook, and then again duplicated into Once Upon a While. So not the first, second, or third time he's mentioned a pile of rocks and looking for a grave, specifically. And then finally, they never knew it was a chase they sought and not the quarry. And the quarry can be, considered a deep, large pit made of stone or other materials that have been extracted. So maybe the treasure is near some sort of stone, rock quarry, or something like that. So that's my last final thought. And I know a quarry is not the same as a Rockwell or anything like that, but these are all very, in the same vein. So again, why does it matter? I don't know. I mean, look at this photo of Norman Rockwell. This is what I'm doing. I'm trying to have fun. I'm trying to be creative. I'm trying to take new angles. That's why it matters. I mean, it matters to me, and it's fun, and it's keeping me interested, and it's keeping my brain alive. So I know there's a lot of serious conversations going on and some disagreements between searchers, but I think instead we should be looking at how we're all the same instead of how we're all different, and trying to highlight those differences between each other and attack each other for those reasons. So instead, let's have some fun. Hope you guys enjoyed this presentation, and rock on. See ya.